Number 8. Bitcoin, Bonnie and Clyde. In 2016, Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan pocketed a whopping $71 million in stolen Bitcoin that they somehow obtained from hackers who had already stolen it from the cryptocurrency exchange known as Bitfinex. Over the next 5 years, the value of the haul multiplied exponentially, bringing the couple's fortune well into the billions. They went to great lengths to hide their ill-gotten riches by moving the money around through complex transactions, making its path very difficult to follow. The couple had a nice life for the most part, including frequent travel and a $6,500 per month apartment in central Manhattan. And while they made some questionably expensive purchases like their lavish wedding, they lived a mostly ordinary lifestyle. In fact, they were better known for their oddball personalities and social awkwardness than any display of wealth. Federal agents eventually traced the stolen Bitcoin to the couple and arrested them in the largest financial seizure in U.S. history. They were charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering and conspiracy to defraud the United States. For this, they faced up to 25 years in federal prison. Lichtenstein is now considered a flight risk thanks to his ties with Russia and is being held in custody, while Morgan posted a $3 million bail and was allowed to go back to the couple's apartment. She's on house arrest, and her internet use is strictly monitored and limited. The couple are both reportedly in the process of negotiating plea deals to hopefully stay out of prison. Number 7. Alex Centauri Julius Kivimaki. In 2015, at just 17 years old, a Finnish hacker named Alex Centauri Julius Zekil Kivimaki was convicted of more than 50,000 cybercrimes. He was involved in multiple high-profile cyber attacks and security breaches that affected prestigious companies and institutions like Harvard and MIT. His crimes also consisted of stealing credit card information, money laundering, bomb threats, and denial of service attacks, which overwhelms a server with internet traffic and renders it basically unusable. Due to his young age, the court imposed a 2-year suspended sentence and he avoided any prison time. In 2022, Kivimaki was reportedly charged again with extorting the Vestamo Psychotherapy Center, a once profitable business that went bankrupt. The company started receiving blackmail threats in late 2020 from a hacker who demanded 40 bitcoins at a value of $681,056 to avoid having sensitive patient files published. If the company failed to comply with the given timeline, the hacker said he would start publishing 100 files each day to provide further incentive for the company to continue communicating with us. Vestamo ultimately refused to pay, so the hacker targeted individual patients. Around 22,000 people were victimized, with threats to publish their therapy notes unless they coughed up several $100s worth of Bitcoin within a small amount of time. But the extortionist misstepped when he uploaded files to the dark web without realizing that it included a copy of his home folder. By the time he removed the compromising information, several people had downloaded it and made it available to anyone with access to the dark web, making it relatively easy for investigators to connect him to the Vestamo scheme. He's currently on Europol's most wanted fugitives list for failing to show up to his court sentence. At number 6, Paige Thompson. 37-year-old Paige Thompson was a former Amazon software engineer who used her skills to get the personal information out of more than 100 million Capital One credit card applicants in 2019. Posing as the online username Erratic, she also planted software on illegally accessed servers to obtain computing power for the purpose of mining cryptocurrency. Capital One was first alerted to the data breach through an anonymous tip from a separate hacker who made them aware that there was a vulnerability in the company's security system. Meanwhile, Thompson hardly seemed concerned with covering up her tracks, and even posted cryptic statements on social media indirectly referencing her crimes. Her motive remains unclear. By the time she was arrested, she was unemployed and broke. People who knew her believe that she might have thought she could draw attention to herself and her skills and perhaps land a job, while federal prosecutors made it sound more like she simply wanted some bragging rights. Either way, the data breach came in at the high cost of $250 million to the individuals and companies affected. Thompson's defense attorneys argued that she never meant to profit from the illicit scheme and that there was no evidence of her misusing anyone's identity. Despite this, she was convicted of wire fraud, unauthorized access to a protected computer, and damaging a protected computer. A judge ruled that prison time would be particularly difficult for Miss Thompson because of her mental health and transgender status. With this, she was spared from time behind bars and was sentenced to time served plus 5 years of probation, during which her location and computer usage would be strictly monitored. U.S. Attorney Nick Brown described the sentence as disappointing and not what justice looks like. Do you think she deserved a harsher punishment? Number 5. Virtual home invasion. Starting in 2018, an Ohio family was terrorized by what seemed like an endless attempt to invade their personal privacy. Someone hacked every device in their home and targeted specific household members with taunting messages and even more alarming behavior. Christina Romano told 19 News that she was messaging her son about building a snowman, and suddenly the song "Do You Want to Build a Snowman" from the movie Frozen began playing loudly on her phone. One weekend, Domino's delivered several pizzas that no one in the family ordered to their house. During a trip to Walmart, the hacker messaged Romano's daughter mentioning that there was a red car parked in a nearby handicapped spot. It was true, but the family was shocked by the person's ability to track their every move and even observe their surroundings. They even noticed on one occasion that a drone seemed to be following their vehicle from a short distance. Interestingly enough, the hacker never financially exploited Christine's family. In fact, he literally insulted them by calling them poor. So what was their motive? After swapping out multiple modems, changing their Wi-Fi password several times, and following all other security measures that their internet company and others recommended, the hacker was still somehow getting through. So they got rid of their internet connection altogether for a few weeks, hoping it would ease the intrusive activity and restore the household to a small semblance of normalcy and safety. But the harassment persisted. A team from 19 News came to the home and watched firsthand while the hacker interrupted a game one of Christine's kids was playing on their phone with strange text messages. The family complained to the police countless times and filed a report with the FBI, but it's unclear if their situation ever came to a close. Number 4. Adrian Lamo. Adrian Lamo was a prominent figure in the hacking world during the early 2000s after he broke into high-profile computer networks like the New York Times, Yahoo, and even Microsoft. He offered to fix companies' vulnerabilities for free instead of exploiting them. But if they turned down his offer, he went to the media, hoping that by drawing attention to the issue, he would convince the public to make the company accept his help. In what's now considered an old-school era, before the rise of Twitter and other platforms that today's hackers usually use to brag about their exploits, Lamo had quite an impressive following. Federal authorities identified him as the New York Times hacker in 2003. For this, he pleaded guilty to a felony and served 6 months of house arrest. He became a household name in 2010, though, after he tipped the government off to Chelsea Manning's activities, a former soldier who was found guilty of passing hundreds of thousands of classified diplomatic cables to Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. Overnight, he became an outcast in the hacking community, who saw him as a snitch. Lamo became despised, then quickly forgotten. Even before his downward spiral, he spent most of his adult life couch surfing and failed to hold a steady job, earning him the depressing nickname Homeless Hacker. He also had substance abuse and mental health problems, which got worse after he was isolated from the only community he ever really fit in with. In 2018, Lamo was found dead at the home of his friend's parents, where he stayed after wearing out his welcome everywhere else. No definitive cause of death was ever determined or publicly announced, but it's believed that many years of heavy drug abuse finally took a fatal toll on his body. Number 3. Raul Robles. In 2015, 31-year-old Raul Robles was eating breakfast with his dad at a cafe in Guadalajara, Mexico, one day when a masked gunman entered and shot him a total of 5 times, executing him on the spot. The killer then fled. Robles made a name for himself as a prominent Mexican hacker and put his skills to use by starting a cybersecurity firm that trained government employees. He also spoke often at conferences and gave courses to aspiring learners. But he was a highly controversial figure who enjoyed showing off his wealth, and he had a reputation for humiliating and trolling other hackers. Needless to say, he made many enemies in the hacking world. Some people insisted that Robles' arrogant persona was nothing more than a publicity stunt, and that he was much more likable in person. But those who only knew of him through the internet had made up their minds. For years leading up to his death, Robles was the target of countless death threats. The day before his murder, one of these anonymous threats described how Robles was frequently seen at a certain restaurant. The sender expressed plans to wait and see if he returned the next day. Whoever this was followed through on their promise to kill him. It's unclear whether the murderer was ever caught, but when the story first broke, the suspect was still at large. Number 2, Matthew Bevin and Richard Price. In 1996, a British teenager named Richard Price was caught breaking into systems run by the U.S. Defense Department from a small computer in his bedroom. He gained access to the ballistic weapons research files and removed information about artificial intelligence and battle management. Price also accessed correspondence from a few American agents who operated during 1994 in North Korea during a diplomatic crisis over nuclear inspection. His activity sparked deep concern in the U.S. security officials, who accused him of doing more damage than the KGB themselves and described him as a top threat to national security. Some even speculated that these officials exaggerated Price's danger in order to get more funding for their branch. It's true that there were some legitimate fears that if North Korea got access to the breach, they would blame the U.S. military and retaliate, or at least send some threats. But it was ultimately discovered that much of the correspondence Price broke into came out of South Korea, which is a strong ally to the U.S. and would react the same way North Korea would. The young man's lawyer argued that he was just a novice hacker with only 6 months of experience and chalked up his actions to an overblown schoolboy prank. Instead, they pointed the finger at the U.S. for having such lax security systems. Price ultimately pleaded guilty to 12 counts of gaining unauthorized access to computer systems. He was fined, but spared from serving any jail time. The next year, in 1997, another young Brit, 21-year-old Matthew Bevin, was busted for attempting to access classified systems operated by the American military and Lockheed. His case was dropped just 18 months later due to lack of evidence. Supervisory Special Agent Jim Christie reportedly said that Price and Bevin almost started World War III with their antics, but many believe their abilities were grossly overstated. And at number 1, Barnaby Jack. Just a week before he was supposed to do a major presentation at a hacking convention in San Francisco, 35-year-old Barnaby Jack was found dead in his home. The prolific New Zealand-born computer whiz was famous for being a white hat hacker. It's a term used to describe hackers who put their skills to good use, usually by finding security vulnerabilities, making the owner of the network aware, and sometimes offering to fix the problem for them. Jack's specialty was detecting bugs in small computers within ATMs, medical devices, and more. His findings brought about important changes and improvements in the software many companies used. He initially rose to fame for making ATMs spit out cash, which he presented in a video that went viral in 2010. In the presentation Jack was supposed to give, he planned to demonstrate the techniques he used to break into pacemakers and defibrillators. Days before the scheduled conference, he said that he was capable of killing someone from 30 feet away just by hacking into this type of device. His death came as a shock to friends and fans, as well as those he had helped throughout his career. Even the US was impressed by Jack's skills and perhaps his willingness to use them for good. Sometimes his curiosity got the best of him, though. In one case, he hacked a gold bullion machine at a hotel in Abu Dhabi with the owner's permission. A fellow hacker named Tiffany Strauss-Rad said that the machine wasn't actually owned by the hotel, and his activity triggered a security response. Thankfully, the misunderstanding was fixed with the help of personnel from the U.S. Embassy. When news of Barnaby's death first broke, it sparked suspicions that he was the victim of foul play. Perhaps someone didn't want him to share his secrets at the convention. A medical exam ultimately determined that he passed from an accidental drug overdose, though, proving that his personal demons were his biggest enemy. Thanks for watching. Would you rather lose 10 years worth of photos or have all your personal information stolen in a massive data breach? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.